Hi there. Thanks so much for stopping by my channel today. My name is Tracy St. Louis and I'm a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator from Canada, and you're watching For the Love of Stamping. Today I'm going to share with you a card that I'm making with a new stamp set that comes out of the Celebration catalog. It's called Adorable Owls, and the card I'm going to make is a Slimline card that features this little guy right here. This is the card that we're going to make today, and if you want to craft along with me today, I'm going to give you the supplies that you're going to need in order to do so. So you'll see that it's a Slimline card, and you'll notice that there's different colors that I'm using. I'm going to start with a card base that is fresh Freesia, and it measures 7 inches by 8.5 inches, and I've scored it along the 7-inch mark at 3.5 inches. I then have a shadow layer that I'm going to use to mat behind the working layer. This is black. It measures 3 3/8 by 8 3/8. And then we have the working layer, which is white, and it measures 3 1/4 by 8 1/4. Now you'll notice on my card that we have a nice background of clouds here. And in order to do that, I created a template using the basic border dies. I took a piece of cardstock and I cut the template of the clouds on the top and the bottom of that piece of cardstock just to create a template. And you'll notice that I have the 2 colors that I'm using here, which I'm going to alternate between Highland Heather and Tahitian Tide. So those are the 2 ink pads that you're going to want to have. And in order to create the blending, I needed some blending brushes. Once we've done that, we'll set it aside and we'll move on to coloring the owl. So the owl, you're going to stamp in Memento ink, and you're going to then color him with a bunch of Stampin' blends. So the base of the owl that you can see here, so around his face and his belly and his and then the outer edges, we're done with the medium blends. And the 2 numbers are the SU 800 and the SU 400. The eye, I've colored with the dark Tahitian Tide Stampin' Blend. And we're going to then color over the surface of that with a Wink of Stella just to give it a little bit of sparkle. His bow tie, you'll see there's a piece of Glimmer paper here, but behind that I've actually colored with the dark Parakeet Party, just so that any spaces that aren't filled by the bow tie are then colored in with the coordinating Stampin' Blend. The beak has been done with the dark Saffron. And finally, I did a little touch of white here with a white gel pen to make it pop. And of course, I added some little eyelashes because I thought he needed some. Once we've done that, we'll adhere it to the card. But you'll see here that I've got a number of die cut pieces that I'm using that I've actually die cut out of a stamp bundle called Playing in the Rain. We're going to use some specific dies out of this set. I'm using the clouds, the bow ties, and of course the kite. So with that in mind, we'll die cut those out in the 2022-2024 Tahitian Tide Glimmer paper. Now, if you don't have this set yet, and you probably don't, you can always substitute the kite for a balloon if you wish, but it's your choice. Or there's other items that you could use. And if you don't have it, again, for the clouds, you can always use the cloud punch that we have, or the Give It a Whirl dies also have some of the clouds in them that you could use as well. So I think that covers all of that, with the exception of where did I get the greeting. So the greeting is coming from another new stamp set out of the Occasion Mini, and it's called Love Cats. And it is this greeting here that we're going to use. I love hanging out with you. And what we're going to do here is you're going to need some white craft ink and white embossing powder. You'll emboss it, and then you'll cut it into little sections that will adhere to the card. So why don't we get started coloring or blending the ink. What I'm going to start with here is we're going to start with the Highland Heather. And I'm going to alternate the colors so that we end up with what you're seeing on our background here. So you'll notice here that I did actually start with Highland Heather, but you'll notice it's a sort of a different shade of purple. So what I ended up doing is after I added the Highland Heather, I then came over the surface with a Tahitian tide, and that gives us a brand new color, which I think is really quite neat. So let me start doing that and show you how we're going to finish off this card. So let's open our Highland Heather first. Grab the Stampin' blending brush, and let's lay the template that I created just onto the surface of our working layer. So you want to make sure that as you're doing this, you don't go too dark to begin with, because you can always add color as you go along, but you can't remove the color if you've gone too dark. So I'll start off on the edge, and I'll just blend the Highland Heather into the cardstock, and then I'm going to come back the other way. So you see how I'm going back and forth with the blending brush, and I'm going in different directions to make sure that I get all the ink that is in the brush onto the surface of my cardstock. So you'll see that it gives that light hue. I'm going to rotate this around. I'm going to line up the template, and I will open up my Tahitian tide, and we will then overlay the Tahitian tide right on that surface of the Highland Heather. So we'll start off again, and we'll just lightly go over the surface this way, and then we'll bring it back the other way. And if you don't have enough, you can always add just a touch more, and you'll see how it's changed the color, right? So we'll continue doing the same pattern. I'll do a few more for you just to give you that direction, and then I'll show you the finished product. So we'll start again with the Highland Heather, and we'll move it across the cardstock, and then we'll change the direction of the brush and go back the other way, and continue to do that until I get enough color on there that I'm happy with it, and then I'll come back in with my Tahitian tide and just rotate my template and add the Tahitian tide over the surface, just like so. I like doing this style. I like creating that background. It just gives depth to the working layer. If you don't have the depth, it doesn't quite, look the same. So I think it's worthwhile to do something like this. You can achieve different textures on your working layers with embossing folders as well, which is a nice idea. But this one here just gives you that little bit extra. So I just want to rotate that template around. And as I go towards the bottom, I'm going to actually start to focus more on the blue. So we'll go from more of a purple down to a blue, so you can see how I've gone from a purple hue through a blue hue and finished with just the blue. So that'll be our working layer. So let's get our ink pads out of the way. So I mentioned to you, you needed a number of Stampin' blends, and those are the neutrals, or sorry, the medium colors, and then some of the other ones that we had. So let's just do this. I like to have a little layer so that it doesn't, like these blends are pretty juicy, so they will bleed through, and you want to protect your surface, then just add a scrap piece of paper so that it's not going to bleed through into your surface area. So as I mentioned, the outer edges of the little owl I've done with the SU 400. I'm going to use the larger brush tip, and I'm just going to start coloring in around his head. And then I will finish through to his little belly as well. I love the way these Stampin' blends the ink just flows, and it doesn't leave any sort of lines where you've, overlaid the color. And you can use the same blend to darken it down if you don't find that it's enough. which is great. So if you wanted this layer, say you wanted the tips of his ears a little darker, just come back over the surface and add a little more color, and it just darkens them down. And we'll do his wings. So you can see here that I've actually already fussy cut this. So that gives us his wings. And it also, if you cut it in advance, it already gives you the, the cutout, which means that as you're coloring this, you want to make sure that you've colored all of the areas, and you can always get to the outer edges and cover any of the white spots that may have been left behind. So that just kind of hides those for you. Okay, let's move on to the the lighter color and the smaller areas. So I'm going to use the SU 800, and again using the brush tip, I will fill in the rest of his ears, and we'll color in his face. Just a little tip here that if you'll notice that as you're coloring, over time, as the color dries from these alcohol markers, it tends to change color. And if you kind of want to speed up that process, you can always use the tip of your finger and put it down, and the warmth of your finger will help to dry the ink and give you that more true finished color. I'll move on to his bow tie. Again, this is the dark Parakeet Party. And we'll use the little brush tip. And as I mentioned, I am going to cover this over with a bow tie that I've already cut out. But this just fills in those back spaces that when I lay the glimmer paper over top, if any area, since it's a tiny bit smaller, you don't want to see white. So that gives us the nice background. So now dark Tahitian tide, I'm going to color in this portion of his eye. And then once I've done that, I want to add a little sparkle to it, for which I will use my Wink of Stella, just to give him some glimmer. I'm going to take a black Stampin' Blends. I'm just going to take that over the surface of what was stamped with the Memento ink, just to darken it down a little bit more. I think it looks a little better as they darken it down. And finally, to make his eye pop, I have a white gel pen. I'm just going to touch into the center of where it's already white, just to give it a little bit more life. We'll color his beak with the dark Saffron. And just like so. And lastly, we're going to give him some eyelashes. I'm going to grab a black marker or a black pen, and I'm just going to extend his eyelashes. Little eyelash extension here. Like so. See, it gives it just a little more character. So now we're finished with the coloring piece. So we can start to layer things together here just to see the finished product come together. So I'll take my working layer, I'm going to mat it onto my shadow layer, and I'll just use some liquid glue. So I'm using Tombow glue, which I've put into a little tube here that I bought off of Amazon. I like the fine tip on this a little bit better than what we have on the actual container for the Tombow glue. And I will mat that right onto the surface here. And again, of course, you already know probably, but by using Tombow glue or a liquid glue of any form will allow you to move your cardstock around just so that you can make it absolutely square and perfect with your matte layer, like so. Now I'm going to add my owl. I'm going to pop him on probably somewhere around here, and I'll take the pieces that I had die cut from the Rainy Days, Playing in the Rain bundle, and we will start to place these guys as well. So I like to kind of place them first before I actually glue them down, and then that way I have an idea of where everything's going to wind up. Okay, so I might want to do that. I'll put his bow tie on at the end, and the kite layer piece. So I think from from a perspective of how these are looking. I've got my sentiment already embossed and cut out, and I am going to place the I love up at the top. So I can see I might want to move that down a little bit, and then I'm going to grab my scissors and cut off this little extra piece that I have, and we're going to place the hanging here somewhere in there. And then the with you can come down here somewhere. And so now I want to make sure that it's balanced from top to bottom, right? So I want to make sure that I have sort of everything sort of symmetrical, that there's enough coverage here as there is up here. And when I'm happy with that, then I will start to place everything down with the adhesive. So I think I'll start with my first cloud, and I'm again using just liquid glue. I'm going to grab some tweezers because knowing me, I'll probably drop this right onto the center of the card and then get glue everywhere. That would not be fun or nice. We'll place that one about here, I guess. That looks pretty good. I'm going to put the kite down next. Again, just some liquid adhesive right down that string. It's always tricky. See, that's the advantage of having a little fine tip glue pen or glue nozzle, because then you can get the glue on there and not get it all over the place. So we'll bring this guy down maybe about here. Let's kind of do it like that. And then we'll just touch it down and we'll add our owl. Now, I find this is too long. So since I'm still here, I'm going to just pick that up and snip some of that off. Okay, get that out of the way. And then I'll place my owl down like so. All right, let's grab some more liquid glue. And you can see on the back of this what I mean when I say that the color bleeds through when you're using Stampin' Blends. That's why I always like to have something on the surface of my table just to protect it, because alcohol ink is permanent and we don't want to have permanent stains on our surfaces. All right, so that looks okay there. Let me put the hanging down. You could use dimensionals on this if you wanted to, but I wanted everything flat onto my card. So we'll place that in there. Okay. Grab the I love, we'll place that one down, like so. And then finally, our last two little clouds will get glued down. I'm anxious to show you some more of the samples that I've made with this stamp set, the Adorable Owls. I sort of latched on to it. I tend to do that when I see some really cute, fun, little quirky sets that Stampin' Up! Comes out with. I latch onto them and then I just play like crazy with them all the time, making lots and lots of cards. I think this one goes this way. I always try to figure out which way the cloud's supposed to go, and I kind of lean towards having more of the puffy part at the bottom than at the top. So I have about 4 or 5 other cards that I can show you, and I will eventually get to making some videos for those as well, so you can always tune back to my For the Love of Stamping channel at any time just to see what else I have. And of course to see any other directions or ways in which you can use the stamp. So let's grab the little bow. So I did, like I say, cut this out with the Glimmer paper, the 2022-2024 Glimmer paper. Probably one of my favorite Glimmer papers that Stampin' Up! Has come out with, because there's so many nice colors. All these in colors are just so pretty. I'm hoping that some of them will carry over into the future. So you see what I mean here? You see how when I put my bow down, you can still see some of the background. If I hadn't colored that in with the Parakeet Party, you would have ended up seeing white, and we don't want that. The last little piece is just this layer that goes onto the kite, and it's tricky sometimes to figure out which way it goes, but I believe it goes that way. Yeah, so that's just a piece of designer series paper. This is actually another free item that's in the Celebration catalog. It is a level 2 and it's called Dandy Design DSP. One more thing to do. I'm just going to grab the card base and we're going to layer it on and we're done. And there's your finished card. Now I want to show you some additional cards. Yes, so this one's already posted on my blog. I haven't done a video of it yet. It is a magnetic slider card. So behind the owl, there's a magnet. You can easily take it off and see. And then you can just pop it back on. And it finds where the magnet is. And then you just grab the little pull tab. And then you just pull out the sentiment. And you'll see it says, sending smiles across the miles. Here I'm using the Give It a Whirl dies, and I made a cute little Give It a Whirl card. So you can see how I've stamped the sentiment into the window here. And then as you rotate it around, hoot hoot my friend, it's your day. This one I posted up on my blog already. This one are the Adorable Owls in a Treehouse. And if you visit my blog for theloveofstamping.com, you'll get the instructions or the details and all the measurements of what I used to make this card. And my last card is this one again. See, I've used my template to create my background with the little clouds. And thanks so much for stopping by. I hope you've enjoyed my video and I hope to see you soon. Be sure to check back and subscribe to my channel for the love of stamping and see some more videos that I've created using these dies and these stamp sets. Have a fantastic day. Talk to you soon. Bye now.